This video is a brief tutorial on how to configure class check operations in Visicon. I'll start by defining filters, then set up class check operations, refine filters with expressions, define constraints and exclusions, run precision clashing, and end with the generation of an issue report. We switch to an open Visicon project of a hospital. If we look at the Models tab, we can see that we have federated several discipline models. The basic building block of how you configure the inputs of any one of Visicon's operations is using filters. In today's session, we'll set up clash checks between the ductwork and structural beams. We switch over to the Filters tab to create our first filters. I use the right-click Insert option to create a new filter and rename it Ducts. I like having the Isolate option that is found in the Home ribbon turned on when defining filters. This allows me to see my selection sets as I'm defining and refining the filter's definitions. Using the categories listed below, start by unselecting all categories, then under the Mechanical Systems, select Duct. You can see the ducts have been selected and isolated in the View panel. I'm going to zoom in and take a closer look at what we've just defined in our filter. I can see that some connections in the ducts are missing. Going back to the categories list, I also select duct fittings. This seems to capture all of the ducting I was after. Next, we'll create another new filter. We'll name this one Beams, and using the categories list, select Structural Beams. We'll come back to these filters and add more refinements using expressions in a bit. To create a clash test, we open the Operations ribbon, expand to the new icon, and select Clash Test. We see that the new clash test operation is now listed in the Operations tab. Let's rename it Beams versus Ducts. The configuration options for the selected operation are listed in the lower panel. We can see that the clash test operation is set for dual input filter source by default. We keep that setting. We now need to select the filters that define our check's two inputs, input A and B. By default, all loaded models are listed as their own filter. For this example, we select Ducts, one of the filters we just created, as input set A. We then select Beams for input set B. We can now select and run the operation. You can see that this clash test resulted in 354 clashes. The model switches to issue color mode and color codes all clashing components according to the operation color. We zoom out and can see all of the clashes in the project. To isolate just the clashes, we switch to the Issues ribbon and select the Issues Only option. At this stage, we'll also turn off the General Isolate mode by going back to the Home ribbon and turning it off. Moving in closer, we can see the clashes. At this point, you can switch to one of Visicon's default color modes by component type or family or system. If we select one of the ducts and switch to the Parameters tab, we have access to all of the component's instance properties. We see that the system information is also available. Let's now assume that we've been asked to focus on the coordination and potential clashes of two systems only, SA101 and SA94. What I'll show you next is how to refine your filters in clash check operation to do exactly that. I switch back to my filters, turn off the Issues Only mode, and then turn on the General Isolate mode again so that I can clearly see what I'm defining in my filters. I zoom out to have a better overview of the project. I create a new filter and name it Systems 101 and 94. I want this filter to select any component type that is part of Systems 101 and 94. To do that, I select the filter and then select all categories. You can see how we are now selecting all components in the project because they're red. To prepare for writing the expression, I want to collect the property names I'm going to use, in this case the system name, before I start writing the expression. To do that, I select the ducts filter to isolate the ducts. I select one of them, find the property I'm going to use in my expression, select it, then using the right-click option, pick Copy Variable. This copies the variable syntax into my clipboard. In Visicon, component properties are referred to as variables when used in expressions. I can now write my expression for the new filter. A convenient way to write expressions is to use the right-click Expression Editor option. This gives you a bigger area to compose longer expressions. I use the Control-V or right-click Paste option to insert the property name that I had just copied into my expression editor. You can see we've now inserted the variable mechanical.systemName. This is the syntax Visicon uses to refer to that property as a variable and how it's used in expressions. You can now write an unlimited number of expressions with this variable. Next, I type equals, and because the system name is a text, using quotation marks that indicate a string, type SA101. This selects all components with the system name equal to SA101. To add system 94 to my filter, I copy the entire expression, add the OR operator, and paste. I then change the 101 to 94. I hit the Accept button to close the editor and can see the result of this new expression. Now all components assigned to these two systems are selected and isolated. I switch back to the Operations tab so that I can create a new clash test. I select my existing clash test, clone it, and then rename it Beams versus Ducts Systems 101 and 94. I can also assign this check a different color. We will keep the broad input set definitions untouched. To refine our clash test, we'll use the Constraints option. By selecting the Systems 101 and 94 filter that we just created for input A, constraints, we are conditioning our input components, in this case the ducts, to also be part of the specified systems. This is like applying an AND Boolean operation between two sets of filters. I run the new clash test operation and can see 51 detected clashes. At this point, I recommend you deactivate the other operation and only keep the new one. I turn off the general isolate mode and reactivate the issues mode. This isolates all selected beams that clash with the ducts of our selected system. I zoom in to take a closer look and notice two round ducts. To better differentiate the components, I also switch to the family color mode and select one of the ducts. I can see that in the model, these round ducts are from the family taps. I don't want these two round ducts included in my clash report because they can be easily field adjusted. Next, I'll show you how to exclude these round ducts from our clash test. Switching back to the filters, I create a new filter and name it taps. This time, we will be writing a simple expression, so we don't need to open the editor. I go to copy the family name parameter and notice it is a multi-variable parameter. Visicon gives you access to the various sub-parameters that are associated with complex properties like family. We select the identity name option and paste it into the expression field. I complete the expression by typing in the equal sign and the text taps. You will notice that the two round ducts that are visible in the screen are now selected and part of this filter. We switch back to our operations and clone the last clash check. We change its color and add the distinction rectangular only. This time we want to exclude taps from input set A. We do that by selecting the newly created taps filter under the Input A Exclude option. I run the new check and see we are now down to 49 remaining clashes. To see the results, I turn off the previous operation. As a last step, I'll show you how to create an issue report. I go to the Reports ribbon and under the New option, select the Issue Summary Report. This creates a new report that is listed under the Reports tab. We'll select our latest clash check from the list of operations and run the report. An Excel report file has opened and I can see each clash listed with an image. I can have any of the affected component's properties listed in the report for easier identification by simply copying the variable and adding it to the Variables to Show list in the report configuration. This concludes my tutorial on how to set up, configure, and refine clash checks. You can see how easy it is to configure our model checking operations to meet your specific criteria. If you haven't done so already, go to visicon.com to get your free trial today.